Yourself through the race with vehicle and asset finance from Absa. Today, tomorrow, together.
If it's Gaborone, the capital of Botswana, in June, it's the Toyota Kalahari Botswana 1000 Desert Race.
Run for the 29th time this year, the Toyota Desert Race is the only marathon race on the Absa Off-Road Championship calendar, and it's the biggest sporting and social event of the year in Botswana.
Run over 3 days, the Toyota Kalahari Botswana 1000 Desert Race kicks off with a 70-kilometer prologue to determine start positions. A good grid position is imperative, and prologues always provide for plenty of drama.
Among the favourites for this year's race were the Donaldson-Nissan Navara pair of Hannes Grobler and reigning South African co-drivers champion Joan Moore. Grobler is a favourite in Botswana and has 5 desert race wins to his credit, while Moore won in a special vehicle with Mark Corbett.
It's a very bad event for the body panels and for the looks of the car, because the bush just tears it apart, and there's some sections where you just go through the bush and it absolutely tears the car apart. It's not so hard on the gearboxes and the drivetrain, but you got to look after it. It's 1,000 k's, not 500.
The father and son pair of Hichu and Jaap de Bruin in the Micra Excel Toyota Hilux were looking for their 3rd prologue victory in a row.
We struggled a bit in the beginning to get used to the terrain, a little bit slippery, but after that we settled down and we had a clean run. As I said, the bucky is perfect, nothing wrong with the bucky. We're still waiting for the times now, but I think we must more or less be in the top 5, hopefully.
There were early battle scars for George and Sharon Barkhuizen in the AIM Toyota Hilux, and a steady performance from Harry Smith pair Kobus van Tonda and Rian Gwalpa in the X-Factory Ford Ranger. Ford is the first manufacturer to go diesel route in the Absa Off-Road Championship, and there were high hopes for the two Works twin-turbo diesel Ford Ranger TDCIs, prepared in Pietermaritzburg by former SA champion Neil Woolridge.
We're finding our feet, and we're finding our feet quite quickly. We've done testing, and we're very happy with the car. We've made a lot of changes to the car again after Sugar Belt, with some big improvements. So it's a big learning curve for us, but hopefully we'll close the gap, and hopefully before the end of the year we can knock them off the pedestal.
Circuit racing and kart star Leroy Poulter and Rob Howie blitzed the Class E opposition in the factory Ferodo Nissan hardbody, with championship leaders Cliff and Louis Weichelt setting the pace in Class D in the N1 4x4 Toyota Hilux D4D.
Hannes Grobler with Jean Moore and Chris Visser with Jaapie Badenhorst in the RFS Toyota Hilux shared the fastest time, with Poulter and Howie breaking into the top 10 in the Class E Nissan hardbody.
The Century Racing pair of Colin Matthews and Alan Smith produced a blistering run to dominate the special vehicle category.
It's an advantage, come on, you know, it's nice to be up front. It's the first time, I think it's the first time we've won it overall up front, so it's going to be very nice. It's going to be lots of fun tomorrow.
Former quad racer Jimmy Zahus and Stefan Kutsia were the surprise package in the Mountain Dew Porter, while Nick and Ryan Harper produced another solid performance in the Atlas Copco Bat. Former winner Mark Corbett and Rudy Balzar came up with an encouraging run in the Century Racing CR2 4x4, and Don Thompson and James Watson dominated Class B and were in among the Class A contenders.
Yeah, I know we had a good run there, settled down. I really enjoyed the track. Yeah, we didn't take too many wrong slots, 1 or 2, but yeah, we had a hell of a good run.
Defending champion Shamir Variawa and Siegfried Rousseau were also happy with their prologue performance.
I think we're in a comfortable position. I think 5th or 6th on the road. Yeah, it just remains now. We just got to keep the pressure on the guys in front and see what happens.
The Cape Town pair of Derek Dutoy and Ian Pinar set the pace in Class B in the Orange Tree Bat. But the big talking point was the absence of championship leaders Evan Hutchinson and Achim Bergman from the top 10 in the special vehicle category.
There was an air of expectation on day 2 of the race as VIPs and spectators crowded the start with the Toyota Kalahari Botswana 1000 Desert Race, a unique event in that it unites an entire nation.
All over Botswana, people actually travel from as far out as Francistown and Maun to visit Gaborone just for the race, and they actually enjoy it. They camp out there the whole weekend. There's just a hype of activity. It's got tremendous support among the local people.
The first cars away in the production vehicle category were the Donaldson Nissan Navara of local favourite Hannes Grobler and Jean Moore, and the RFS Toyota Hilux of Chris Visser and Jaapie Badenhorst, with the two crews sharing the fastest prologue time.
There was early drama though when Hannes Grobler and Jean Moore and teammates Ivan Tollefson and Quinn Evans hit the same rock. The Grobler car was cannibalized to keep Tollefson and Evans going. There were also problems for Hijo and Jaap de Bruin with the broken stub axle halting their progress, and the series of events conspired to hand the race lead to the factory Castrol Toyota Hilux crew of Hein Latergan and Chris Birkin. Unfortunately for them, they were also to fall by the wayside before the first designated service points.
Charging through the field were Duncan Foss and Rolf Pitchford in the third Works Donaldson Nissan Navara. They started 28th on the road after a disappointing prologue and had scythed through the field. Also going well but carrying the scars of battle were George and Sharon Barkhuizen in the AIM Toyota Hilux. Kobus van Tonder and Riaan Gulper looked to be in good shape in the Unifreight Ford Ranger and were running ahead of the two Works entries. Chris Visser and Jaapie Badenhorst had slightly altered the aerodynamics on the RFS Toyota Hilux, but were also going strongly. Behind them, former SA champions Neil Woolridge and Kenny Schulthammer were also to run into problems and failed to make it to the first designated service point.
Pretoria student Christian de Plooy and a tough rugby fanatic Henk Janse van Vieren were putting together a solid performance in the second RFS Toyota Hilux, and behind them, Anthony Taylor and Robin Houghton were on a charge in the second factory Castrol Toyota Hilux.
An unhappy day for the Works Ford Racing Ranger team saw the demise of Thomas Rundle and Stavros Giannakis, who all but disappeared into a mud hole that claimed a number of other victims.
On their desert race debut, the Transcorp Ford Ranger pair of Graham Leith and Mike Lawrenson were putting together their best performance of the season, while Gary Bertolf and Donnie Stassen were another Toyota crew in a hurry in a much modified vehicle. Behind them, Terence Marsh and Peter Groenewald were also going along steadily on what was to be a long day.
It was tough going for the Class D and Class E runners, with Picky Labuskaghni and Rikus Erasmus setting the pace in Class E in the 4x4 Mega World Toyota Hilux. Class D champions Cliff and Louis Weichelt failed to make it to the start, and the early running was made by Dewald van Breda and Johan de Tooy in the Northam Toyota D4D. Chasing van Breda and de Tooy were brothers Johan and Werner Horn in the Malelani Toyota Land Cruiser.
At the designated service point, an unbelievable performance had taken Duncan Foss and Ralph Pitchford into the lead. The Nissan crew were followed by Kobus van Tonder and Riaan Gulper, with the RFS Toyota Hilux entries of Visser and Badenhorst and de Plooy, with Janse van Vieren also having good runs. Anthony Taylor and Robin Houghton were making up ground, but for Castrol Toyota teammate Hein Latergan, there was very severe disappointment.
I liked the corners, so we were going well. We caught all the guys in front of us and passed them one by one. Then Hannes had the problem when he hit the rock. We almost hit the same rock, but I could avoid it in time. So we had a very good run. It was very disappointing when the suspension broke.
At the DSP halt, Foss and Pitchford already had a lead of 12 minutes. Taylor, Houghton and Berthold Stassen lost time in mud holes, and Labuskaghni and Erasmus were going great guns at the front of Class E.
Vehicle and asset finance from Absa, overcoming all obstacles.
Absolute entertainment. Absolute engineering. Absolute analysis.
Medium and the soft compound tires, which should favor the Ferrari.
Absolute F1. Absolutely essential.
On the surface, a Formula One car is about sheer power, speed, and cornering ability. But go inside and you'll discover a marvel of engineering and precision. On the surface, being a Formula One driver is about fame, glory, and glamour. But go inside and you'll discover a mind of infinite skill and passion. Get under the skin of Formula One with Inside Grand Prix every Sunday before the race. Exclusive to your World of Champions. Delivered to you by Ram Hand-to-Hand Couriers.
Vehicle and asset finance from ABSA, going the extra mile to get you financed.
After DSP production vehicle category leaders Duncan Foss and Ralph Pitchford continued on their merry way. It was a performance that had the makings of becoming Toyota Desert Race legend, with the pair steadily increasing their lead over Chris Visser and Jaapie Badenhorst in the battered RFS Toyota Hilux.
Youngsters Christian Duploy and Henk Janssen van Vieren were doing a sterling job in the second RFS Toyota Hilux, which looked in a lot better shape than its sister car. The factory Castrol Toyota Hilux pair of Anthony Taylor and Robin Houghton were pushing hard to make up 40 minutes lost in mud holes. And Class E leaders Pikkie Labuschagne and Rikus Erasmus were plugging steadily along in the four-cylinder 4x4 Mega World Toyota Hilux, which was finding it tough going in the thick sand.
The Atlas Copco Toyota Hilux of Gary Bertholdt and Dani Stassen had also lost wads of time in mud holes and, like the Visser Badenhorst entry, was looking a little battered. Bertholdt and Stassen were being chased by Ivar Tollefson and Quinn Evans, who were still running courtesy of bits and pieces from the Grobler Moore car when both teams hit the same rock early on in the race. Behind Tollefson and Evans, the second 4x4 Mega World Toyota Hilux of Class E championship leaders Dion Fent and Ian Palmer were also trying to make up time. They were looking for a third win this season, with reigning Class E champions Jannie Visser and Joks Leroux plugging along in the RFS Toyota Hilux.
Also on a charge after repairing the stub axle that broke not long after the start were Hugo and Jaap de Bruin in the Mickelin XL Toyota Hilux, who'd steadily made up places. They'd moved ahead of the Transcore Ford Ranger of Graham Leaf and Mike Lawrenson, who were putting in a strong performance on their first desert race. Heinz Stumpfer and Hendrik van der Linde were running third in Class D in the Mickelin XL Toyota Hilux, with Terence Marsh and Peter Groenewald in the Regent Racing Nissan Navara, another crew having to make up time after trials and tribulations. Kobus van Tonder and Riaan Golpa had lost ground, and they would fail to see out the day.
A phenomenal performance saw Duncan Foss and Ralph Pitchford in the overnight lead.
Look, we've got to keep our heads, keep it together, see where our position is and sort of drive accordingly, not do anything too crazy. It's a big race, this one. We really want to win it, so we must just keep our cool for tomorrow.
After a day of drama, Duncan Foss and Ralph Pitchford held a 33-minute lead over Chris Visser and Jaapie Badenhorst. A fine performance too from Pikkie Labuschagne and Rikus Erasmus, who were a solid fifth in the first Class E entry.
As was the case in the production vehicle category, there was plenty of early drama among the special vehicles. The Century Racing Batter Prologue winners Colin Matthews and Alan Smith was an early casualty with a broken gearbox, and after starting 14th on the road, championship leaders Evan Hutchison and Achim Bergman were blasting their way through the field in the Motorrad Revo 1 4x4. The pair were simply bombing past stranded and slower cars.
Hutchinson and Bergman were chasing a fourth win on the trot and were quickly into the special vehicle lead. Last year's winners, Shamir Variawa and Siegfried Rousseau, were going along at a slightly more sedate pace and were running strongly in the Porter, sponsored by Total in Botswana. With local sponsorship, Variawa and Rousseau were keen to pick up a good result, and it was a case of so far, so good early in the race.
There was also a steady start for 07 winners and reigning South African champions Cully and Quinton Silwalt in the Silwalt Racing Bat. Jimmy Zawas and Stefan Kutse were in touch with the leaders in the Mountain Dew Porter, with the father and son crew of Nick and Ryan Harper also looking solid in the early stages of the race in the Atlas Copco Bat in its turquoise colours.
The Century Racing CR2 of Mark Corbett and Rudy Balzar got off to an encouraging start before the reliability bogey struck, and they retired before the first designated service point. The CR2 was being chased by Nassim Musaji and Mohammed Moulston in the Tyre Rack Jimco, with an interesting race situation starting to unfold. There was also a little tragic comedy when Class P frontrunners Don Thompson and James Watson arrived at a mud hole. Looking to take a run at the obstacle, they reversed into the Orange Tree Bat of Dutoy and Pienaar and put themselves out of action.
There were Also, mudhole woes for brothers-in-law Mike Whitehouse and Matthew Carlson in the Regent Racing Bat. They got themselves bogged down and were to lose around 20 minutes.
The father and son team of Herman and Wichard Sulwald got off to a dodgy start, but were making up time in the Sulwald Racing Zarko, which was sounding healthy enough. Behind them, Class P champions Johan and Etienne Besaidenote were also battling with a misfire, and hot on the heels of the Edenko back were local hero Atang Makgachenene, a previous desert race winner, and Zimbabwe co-driver Philip Arsenal.
First car into the designated service point was the Motorrad Revo 1 of Evan Hutchinson and Achim Bergman, with a good battle developing between the pair and Shamir Varayawa and Siegfried Rousseau in the total porter. Jimmy Zaas and Stefan Kutsia were also in the mix, along with Nick and Ryan Harper, who were battling with a clutch problem.
Brothers David and Gary White were still in control of Class P after an uneventful morning in the Ruacon Bat, and was 7th overall, with Class B leaders Derek Dutoy and Ian Pienaar also in the top 10 at the compulsory halt.
The all-wheel drive Motorrad Revo 1 of race leaders Evan Hutchison and Achim Bergman, who built the car, had the advantage of the tighter sections of the route. The more powerful Mountain Dew porter of Jimmy Zaas and Stefan Kutsia and the total porter of Shamir Varayawa and Siegfried Rousseau were more effective when the route opened out, and it added up to an intriguing swing and roundabout battle.
There was also a good battle developing between SA champions Cully and Quinton Sulwald and Comrades marathon veteran and former Gauteng motorcycle champion Nick Harper and son Ryan, who were worried about a clutch problem on the Atlas Copco Bat.
After their mud-all woes, Mike Whitehouse and Matthew Carlson had made a good recovery in the Regent Racing Bat and were steadily moving back up the pecking order. The pair were followed by Nahim Musaji and Mohammed Molson in the Tyrak Jimco, who had quietly gone about their business with no attempt at heroics. The brothers White were still in control of Class P in the Ruacon Bat in what was their best showing of the season. And behind them, Cape Crew Derek Dutoy and Ian Pienaar had gearbox concerns, but led Class B by a country mile in the Orange Tree Bat. Tagging along behind the Orange Tree car were the Besaidenote brothers in a 6-sounding Edenko Bat, and they were headed for retirement.
Much to the delight of locals, Atang Makgachenene and off-road debutant Philip Arsenal were still going strong in the healthy-sounding porter, and they'd steadily moved up the leaderboard. Battling along behind them were another father and son crew in Glenn and Rob Gibson from KwaZulu-Natal.
First at the overnight halt were Evan Hutchison and Achim Bergman, with the Motorrad crew facing a couple of tactical dilemmas.
We're in the lead of the championship, and we've got to remind ourselves that I've never won the desert and I'm dying to win it. But at the same time, we want to win the championship. So it's so tricky out there. You know, there's so many trees and they're so close to the edge. And the moment you start pushing, it just, you know, you can take a wheel off so quickly. So I'll sit and think about that tonight.
With a minute separating the first three cars, the scene was set for an intriguing final day, with Cully and Quinton Sulwald also still firmly in the mix. The White brothers still led Class P, and Dutoy Pienaar led Class B.
Vehicle and asset finance from ABSA, going the extra mile to get you finance.
There's only one team that pushes the limits, sets the pace, and leads the way.
Off the beaten track to find solutions.
Sunrises in the African bush are one of this world's little pleasures. But for the survivors of Day 2 of the Toyota Kalahari Botswana 1000 desert race, there were other matters to consider. A tough route and more water than you would expect on a desert race had taken their toll, and only 24 of the original 58 starters were still running.
Ahead of the survivors were another punishing 500 kilometers of thorn trees, sand, mud and water, and there was little doubt there were going to be more casualties before the finish back in Gaborone. Crews like production vehicle category leaders Duncan Foss and Rolf Pitchford were in a comfort zone. But among the special vehicles, 4 cars within 2 minutes of each other was a recipe for drama. Where Foss was concerned, there was still room for caution.
You don't need too much pace, but you can't afford to relax too much because you break your rhythm then. So we just got to go at a good pace, try and not go off the road, keep it neat and tidy, keep it in the tracks, and then just watch closer to Gaborone. There's a lot of water on the track, and we've got to make sure we don't get stuck. That's our biggest challenge today, is not to get stuck in those river crossings and those marshes closer to Gaborone.
Last year's winner Shamir Varayawa was fighting the flu.
What I'm looking forward to today is I think we're going to we have a big dice, myself, Evan and Jeremy. I mean, we are within 1 minute 3 cars, so it's going to be a heavy dice till halfway, I think, and maybe to the end as well.
Former quad racer Jimmy Zahus and Stefan Coetzee were the surprise package of the race so far in the Mountain Dew Porter. Zahus had spent a sleepless night.
Couldn't sleep last night at all. It's just, I don't know. Hopefully it'll go away once we start going, but I'm actually quite nervous.
Former desert race winner Kali Solvat was looking forward to a good day, but had his own concerns.
Well, first of all, this first loop is dry. That's a plus point. It's not... in the morning it's quite cold, so luckily that's dry. We're a little bit behind on time. We didn't have major problems, but the car's losing a bit of power on the engine, so we'll have to take it slow till the DSP. We'll see if we get there, and then from there it's all the way home to Game City, hopefully.
Yeah, I think we're gonna give it all in this morning and try and close the gap up to Duncan and then chase him to the finish. Whether or not we can do it will be wait to be seen.
The Atlas Copco Toyota Hilux had overnight been restored to near showroom condition, but Gary Berthold was in no doubt about what lay ahead.
Yeah, look, it's going to be a very tough one. If it's anything like yesterday, it's going to be a treacherous, tough event going home today. It's another whole 500 Ks. Going to have to keep our head cool and really make sure that we take this baby home today.
For Norwegian Ivar Tollefsen, who has been on climbing expeditions to Antarctica, the agenda included one very important item.
Don't get stuck in a mud hole. I think that's the big thing where you can sit for hours. And then it's, I have to try to gain 13 minutes on Gary Berthold to get some extra points for the championship.
There were also mechanical and other concerns for Cape Crew, Derek de Toy and Ian Pienaar, who were the overnight Class B leaders.
Try and conserve the vehicle. We're a bit worried about it. Our gearbox doesn't sound that great, but obviously the time is important. I think there's only 24 cars in this morning, and we have, I think, about 10 of them behind us. So if we get stuck, hopefully there will be somebody to help us. If not, we have to bribe somebody to push us. So no, we're just going to conserve the car and hope it can bring it through.
But for overnight leader Evan Hutchison, there wasn't a care in the world.
No, good, huh? We're ready for another beautiful day out in the desert. Batteries are recharged. I'm hoping my arms will start working before the race starts. No, we're positive. We're going to have a good day.
The first car away on a chilly morning was the Donaldson Nissan Navara of Duncan Foss and Rolf Pitchford. And with a huge lead in the bag, they already had one hand on the winner's trophy. For Foss, it would be his third desert race win in a row, and after missing the last 2 Botswana races through overseas commitments, it would be a special occasion for Pitchford. His overseas commitments also cost Pitchford the opportunity of 2 South African co-driver championships.
With a huge lead, the experienced Foss and Pitchford were unlikely to take any chances, and you could take poison on the fact that they were well aware of the situation behind them in the special vehicle category, where an almighty scrap was likely to develop. Jimmy Zahus and Stefan Coetzee were only 35 seconds behind overnight leaders Hutchison and Bergman, with Shamir Varayawa and Siegfried Rousseau a further 15 seconds in arrears.
The reigning SA champions, Kali and Quinton Sulwald, were also still in the frame, and Nick and Ryan Harper would not have shelled thoughts of sneaking a win in the Atlas Copco bat. The Day 2 sortie into a mud hole cost Mike Whitehouse and Matthew Carlson dear, and the Regent Racing crew had plenty of time to make up. Whitehouse and Carlson had recovered well after losing 20 minutes on Day 2, but they also had to be wary of Naeem Musaji and Mohammed Mulston, who were only 5 minutes behind in the tyre rack Jimco.
The Chris Visser Yapi Badenhorst RFS Toyota Hilux was still looking beaten and battered, with Badenhorst another of the off-road fraternity's Comrades Marathon veterans. Behind the RFS Toyota, brothers David and Gary White had a huge lead in Class P, but would have Christian de Plooy and Henk Janssen van Vuren on their tails in the second RFS Toyota Hilux. There was no doubt they would come under early attack from Anthony Taylor and Robin Houghton in the factory Castor Toyota Hilux, while Pikkie Labuschagne and Rikus Erasmus had a handy lead in Class E. Derek du Toit and Ian Pienaar in the same boat in Class B, but would be sure to come under pressure from local Botswana hero Atang Makgagane and Zimbabwean Philip Archinal in the BE Mobile Porter.
The hard luck story of the morning belonged to Michelin XL Toyota crew, the De Bruins. They discovered the Hilux had overnight somehow lost its power steering.
It doesn't seem to be our bad luck would stop. I just keep on continue. Yesterday we had a CV joint problem and we managed to fix that on the road. And we came in good, and fortunately this morning when we started the vehicle there wasn't any power steering, so we just busy replacing the steering rack. I think we will have a 30-minute start behind the other guys, but at least we will start today and give it the help.
While the De Bruins were kicking their heels in frustration back at the restart, production vehicle leaders Duncan Voss and Ralph Pitchford have been quickly closed down by special vehicle leaders Evan Hutchison and Achim Bergman, who had the bit between their teeth in the Motorrad Revo 1 4x4.
Spectacular race cam footage from the Motorrad car shows that without cooperation from the car ahead, overtaking in a tunnel of thorn trees and bushes was either impossible or carried a high risk factor.
Not wanting to get caught up in a special vehicle war, the Nissan crew took the first opportunity to move over, and they let the Motorrad car get ahead of them.
Now leading the special vehicle and production vehicle categories were two crews in contrasting situations. One team were in a comfort zone and the other under severe pressure.
The team under pressure was the Motorrad pair of Evan Hutchison and Achim Bergman in the Motorrad Revo 1 entry. Shamir Variawa and Siegfried Rousseau had managed to get past Jimmy Zars and Stefan Kutsia and were also allowed through by Duncan Voss and Ralph Pitchford. The expected battle between the special vehicle frontrunners was starting to develop, with Zars and Kutsia still very much a part of the mix, although the gap between the three lead cars had grown to over 2 minutes.
As expected, the pace up front in the special vehicle category was hectic, and Cully and Quinton Sewald had dropped to more than 3.5 minutes off the leading pace. The Sewald Racing Bat was being chased by Nick and Ryan Harper, who had lost time when a loose wheel necessitated hasty repairs. Mike Whitehouse and Matthew Carlson were now only around 2.5 minutes behind the Atlas Copco car, and putting together another solid performance in the Regent Racing Bat.
Big movers early on the final day were Anthony Taylor and Robin Houghton in the Castor Toyota Hilux and Atang Makgagane and Philip Archinal in the BE Mobile Porter. The factory Toyota crew had moved ahead of both the RFS Toyota entries, and Makgagane and Archinal had also picked up places. Christian de Plooy and Henk Janssen van Vuren were putting in an impressive display in the RFS Toyota Hilux, and in their best performance of the year, Class P leaders David and Gary White again looked in fine fettle in the Rubicon Bat.
Class B leaders Derek du Toit and Ian Pienaar were being closed down by Ivar Tollefson and Quinn Evans in the Donaldson Nissan Navara. And there were the makings of a little cameo performance with Tollefson and Evans, the Atlas Copco Toyota Hilux of Gary Berthold and Dani Stassen, and the worse for wear RFS Toyota Hilux of Chris Visser and Jaapie Badenhorst looking to upstage each other.
The KwaZulu-Natal father and son crew of Glenn and Rob Gibson had shown plenty of perseverance and determination in the Gibson Racing Bat, and were one of only 2 crews left running in Class P. Behind the Gibsons, former SA champion Terence Marsh and Peter Groenewald were also showing plenty of perseverance in the Regent Racing Nissan Navara. When they were caught by Naim Mosaji and Mohammed Molson in the Tyrak Jimco, the experienced Marsh politely moved over to let the Limpopo-based crew go right past.
A series of little niggles had slowed the Mosaji Milston car, and they were on a mission to make up time.
Class E leaders Pikkie Labuschagne and Rikus Erasmus were looking comfortable when they went past a small pocket of spectators. They were leading 4x4 Mega World Toyota teammates and championship leaders Deon Venter and Ian Palmer, who were after their third win of the year. Reigning Class E champions Jannie Visser and Joks Leroux were looking in good shape and had experience going for them. The Class D ranks had been slowly whittled away, and brothers Johan and Werner Horn now found themselves leading the category in the Malalan Toyota Land Cruiser. Behind them, Hichu and Jaap de Bruin had finally got going in the Micra and Excel Toyota Hilux and were pushing as hard as they could to make up for lost time.
At the tail end of the field, Heinz Stumper and Hendrik van der Linde were also headed for retirement, leaving only the Horn brothers running in Class D.
Front of the field, Evan Hutchison and Achim Bergman gave a demonstration of how the slightest lapse in concentration on the desert race can end in near disaster. An encounter with a large bush cost them valuable seconds in what was turning into a touch-and-go battle with Shamir Varayawa and Siegfried Rousseau in the total porter. Last year's winners were fairly racing along and held a slight advantage when the route opened up.
Runaway production vehicle leaders Duncan Foss and Rolf Pitchford were still in complete control of matters in the Donaldson Nissan Navara. They had again settled into a rhythm, and their only worry was a mechanical breakdown.
Gully and Quentin Silwart had fallen by the wayside, and the Atlas Copco batter former winners Nick and Ryan Harper had moved into third place in the special vehicle category. The Harpers were comfortably ahead of Mike Whitehouse and Matthew Carlson in the Regent Racing bat, but all it needs to drop a place or two is a single puncture. There were sections of the route that opened up beautifully, and crews could crank up the speed.
The next target for crews was the final designated service point, and by now Anthony Taylor and Robin Houghton were firmly entrenched in second place in the production vehicle category. The factory Castrol Toyota crew was still running ahead of Chris Visser and Jaapie Badenhorst in the battered RFS Toyota Hilux, still sounding more than healthy. Visser and Badenhorst were now being chased by Atang Makhagenene and Philip Arsenal, who had moved into the top 5 in the special vehicle category.
In what was by far their best ever performance, the impressive Christian de Plooy and Henk Janssen van Vieren were still looking good in the second RFS Toyota Hilux. The Pretoria pair were in their first season in the Premier SP class, but were handling the situation like seasoned veterans. Gary Berthold and Dani Stassen still had hopes of a podium finish in the Atlas Copco Toyota Hilux. And behind them, Class P leaders David and Gary White in the Rurikon bat had a comfortable lead over Glenn and Rob Gibson in the Class P battle.
Former SA champion Terence Marsh is a refugee from the special vehicle category, where he won the 2005 championship with brother-in-law Mike Whitehouse. Now teamed up with Peter Groenewald in the ex-Duncan Foss Regent Racing Nissan Navara, the pair were making up ground and again demonstrating a consistent ability to finish events.
A total of 6 Class B cars started the race, and by mid-morning on day 2, only Derek de Tooy and Ian Pienaar were running in the Orange Tree bat. Behind de Tooy and Pienaar, the 4x4 Mega World pair of Deon Venter and Ian Palmer had taken over the Class E lead from teammates Pikkie Labuschagne and Rikus Erasmus, who were right on the heels of Glenn and Rob Gibson.
With their hopes of catching the crews ahead of them starting to fade, Ivar Tollefson and Quinn Evans were now concentrating on getting the Donaldson Nissan Navara safely to the finish in Gaborone. Valuable championship points now topped their agenda. It was much the same for current Class E champions Jannie Visser and Joks Leroux, while Johan and Werner Horn now had a lock on Class D in the healthy-sounding Malalan Toyota Land Cruiser.
Limpopo-based Naheem Mossaji and Mohammed Molson had lost ground during the morning, and with a designated service point in sight, were now falling into the clutches of Hichu and Jaap de Bruin, who were still charging hard after their very late start.
First into the DSP were Evan Hutchinson and Akin Bergman, who was still on track for win number 4.
A terrific battle had developed between Hutchison and Bergman and Shamir Varayawa with Siegfried de Soo, with the two crews swapping the lead during the course of the morning.
Yeah, we've got a nice tussle with Shamir. You know, we knew we were going to battle on this top loop because there's a whole lot of long straights and we don't have any top end. So we pushed this morning, we got into the lead and we tried to push as hard as we could to make as much gap as we could. But when we got into those straights, he came up behind us and gave us a nerve. I don't think his screen was working. So he got past us and then we got back into the tight stuff. We got back past him again, you know. There's quite a long straight coming back in, so he's caught route up again. But I think from here going home, there aren't too many long straights, so it should be in our favour. We'll have to wait and see.
Yeah. On the final run for the finish at Gaborone, the pressure was on for Hutchinson and Bergman and Varayawa and Rousseau.
We were racing for about 150 k's. We got past Nissan, and eventually we got past Evan. And I think about 10 k's from here, he got past us again. You know, tight, twisty, loose gravel, so he got past us there. But I think he'll pull us on the way home because it's more loose and more flat going home. So we'll try. We're just going to keep our pressure here on him, see what happens.
The Foss and Pitchford Nissan was starting to show a few battle scars, but for the crew, it had been a morning with no major problems.
Ralph, how's your morning been?
Yeah, it's been pretty good. It's extremely soft. You know, yesterday when we did the routes, we were the first car on the road and the sand was nice and hard. And this morning, it's a totally different story. We're really battling to pull top gear, and the space frames have just ridden away from us. So we're just keeping it together and trying to get to the end in one piece.
The solid as ever Atlas Copco bat pair of Nick and Ryan Harper were third in the special vehicle category at the DSP, but it picked up a problem here and there.
One wheel was, we forgot to tighten it yesterday when we put it on, so about 2 k's out, the wheel came loose and we had to stop and put a new wheel on because it damaged the wheel if you look at it there.
Over in the Castrol Toyota camp, the factory crew of Anthony Taylor and Robin Houghton were being forced to revise their game plan for the final leg of the race, the Gaborone.
Yeah, we really went for it this morning. We knew we had to get past 2 RFS Hiluxes quite early, so we got both of them by 40 k's. Gave it a hard push. We're showing a little bit no odos and fourth gears jamming a bit. So we sort of decided to just peg Duncan at this stage, and we got the tricky bits coming up. So we've kept him at about half an hour, and let's see what happens. You know, we haven't quite got the pace. We're going to have to risk too much to catch him. So I think we'll hold station for now.
Local hero Atang Makgenene and Philip Arsenal were now firmly entrenched in the top 5, with Atang happy with their progress through the morning.
Everything seems to be working well. The package seems to be coming together finally.
No problems with the vehicle?
No problems. Only now I got a knocking sound and I felt like I was losing a bit of suspension.
Zimbabwe rally navigator Philip Archinal was having his first ever outing in an off-road car, but was standing up well.
He's doing very well, eh? I'm happy with him. I can't complain. I'm the only one who needs to get the car home now.
The deployed Van Vuuren RFS Toyota Hilux was also starting to show the battle scars of a tough race, but the crew reported a morning free of any trouble.
It's been tough out there. The route's really rough, rutted from yesterday. But other than that, the route's like nice and open, so we can go a bit faster. But we had no trouble, so yeah, good.
Vehicle, all okay with the vehicle?
Yeah, I think mechanically, I don't know, nothing's wrong. I can't feel anything with the car, so I think we're right, yeah.
At DSP, Foss and Pitchford still led by over half an hour, with Marsh and Groenewald into the top 5. 3 Class E cars also featured in the top 10.
On the special vehicle front, only 20 seconds separated Hutchinson and Bergman from the Varayawa Rousseau vehicle, and the race to the finish was on. By this stage, only 8 space frame vehicles were still running.
Vehicle and asset finance from Absa, going off the beaten track to find solutions.
For my glory.
are you looking for in Hungary? Formula One. Find the edge. Exclusively live on Supersport. Brought to you by Tidal Wheel and Tire.
Vehicle and asset finance from ABSA. Overcoming all obstacles.
Some local inhabitants take more interest in the race than others, but at the front of the field there was more drama, and those who are convinced the Toyota Kalahari Botswana 1000 Desert Race has a sting in the tail were once again proved right. Race leaders Evan Hutchison and Achim Bergman looked to be in control when disaster struck.
The Motorrad Revo 4x4 had picked up a right front wheel puncture and the pair pulled to the side of the track.
With Hutchison and Bergman in the lead by less than half a minute at the designated service area, it was the turning point in the race. Race cars are not the easiest vehicles to get in and out of, and while the Motorrad crew were busy changing the wheel, Shamir Variawa and Siegfried Rousseau sailed past the stranded pair into the race lead.
The race had been tipped on its head, with Shamir Variawa and Siegfried Rousseau now on track for their second Toyota Kalahari Botswana 1000 Desert Race victory on the trot. The Total Porter had run into a brake problem, but the advantage was now firmly with the new race leaders. Although conditions on the final leg would suit the 4x4 Motorrad car, Hutchinson and Bergman now had a mountain to climb.
The Motorrad car had been restored to full health, but hopes of a fourth successive win this season had virtually disappeared. Hutchison and Bergman could only hope that Variawa and Rousseau would have a bout of brain fade, or that the Total Porter would pick up a mechanical problem that would provide the race with yet another twist.
There's no doubt who this fan was supporting, but it was a Donaldson Nissan Navara at the front of the production vehicle category, with Duncan Foss and Rolf Pitchford increasing their advantage over Anthony Taylor and Robin Houghton. Foss is a former South African GTI single-seater champion and has also won titles in touring cars. With 3 SA off-road titles also under his belt, he's emerged as one of the most versatile and competent race drivers yet produced in South Africa.
The father and son duo of Nick and Ryan Harper were on track for a podium finish in the Atlas Copco bat, but were also given a fright when an overshoot ended with contact with a rather substantial tree.
The car stalled, and there were frantic signs from the crew for handily placed spectators to come to the rescue.
I'm touching a sandmaster.
Race enthusiasts popped out of the bush, but it still took a bit of manpower to send the Harpers back on their way.
Oh, really? Did you hear? No. You want to play? Push again. Push.
The Harper car had lost a couple of minutes, and that allowed Mike Whitehouse and Matthew Carlson to cut the gap to the Atlas Copco pair to around 6 minutes. But for their day 2 problems in a mud hole, which cost them around 20 minutes, it could have been a totally different story for the Regent Racing pair.
These young fans made it clear where their loyalties lay, with race honours about even between the special vehicles and the production cars. A little overshoot only cost Anthony Taylor and Robin Houghton a few seconds, but the Castor Toyota pair had given up chasing Duncan Foss and Ralph Pitchford. Their only thought now was to get the Toyota home safely and bag some much-needed championship points.
The RFS Toyota of Christian de Plooy and Henk Janssen van Vieren was running around 12 minutes behind the works car, with a well-deserved podium place up for grabs. It was a marvellous performance from the SP class rookies, who had hardly put a wheel wrong all weekend, and they had nearly half an hour in hand over Gary Berthold and Dani Stassen.
Much to the delight of the locals, Atang Makgegenene and Philip Archinal were still running strongly in the top 5 in the special vehicle category. They got stronger as the race progressed, with Gary Berthold and Dani Stassen also having a good final day in the Atlas Copco Toyota Hilux. Berthold and Stassen, like Taylor and Houghton, lost wads of day 2 time in mudholes, and but for that, their races could have been completely different.
An electrical problem temporarily put a halt to progress for David and Gary White, but with the demise of Glenn and Rob Gibson, the Ruacon crew were now the sole runners in Class B. The White brothers approached their racing with a huge amount of enthusiasm and were still showing plenty of late race aggression. Behind the Whites, the by now thoroughly battered RFS Toyota of Chris Visser and Jaapie Badenhorst was still plugging along, as was the Orange Tree Bat in the hands of Class B leaders Derek du Toit and Ian Pienaar. The pair had by now lost all in-car communication, but they had their system of hand signals down pat.
After a great effort by the Cape crew, it was a matter of survival to the finish.
It's amazing what people will do to get themselves on television. A Mexican wave in the middle of the Botswana bush greeted Class E leaders Pikkie Labuschagne and Rikus Erasmus, who were well on their way to a second successive win. They regained the Class E lead when teammates Dion Venter and Ian Palmer retired and were on the fringe of a top 5 finish. It had been tough going for the 4-cylinder Toyota Hilux, with Labuschagne and Erasmus clinging to a tenuous 2-minute lead over Ivar Tollefsen and Quinn Evans in the Donaldson Nissan Navara. Tollefsen and Evans finished 4th on this year's Dakar Rally, but Tollefsen is adamant that a day on the Toyota Desert Race is as tough as anything the Dakar can throw at you.
Unfortunately, it had turned into a long day for Naheem Mossaji and Mohamed Moltzen in the tyre rack Dimco. Their day had been one of fits and starts, with the pair now running at the back of the special vehicle field. It had also turned into a long day for Hichu and Jaap de Bruin, but they'd made a good recovery in the Michelin XL Toyota Hilux and had managed to get past Terence Marsh and Peter Groenewald in the Regent Racing Nissan Navara.
Finding and keeping en route is not always as easy on the Toyota Kalahari Botswana 1000 Desert Race, and with Marsh still acclimatizing to driving an SP class vehicle, it had been a solid performance from the pair. By this time, only 11 production cars out of 28 were still running, and making it to the finish was a feat in itself.
The race had also taken its toll on the Class D entries, and the Mpumalanga-based brothers Johan and Werner Horn were the sole survivors in the Malalan Toyota Land Cruiser. The Cruiser was still sounding more than healthy, and a late burst took the pair to within 26 seconds of the Marsh Groenewald Nissan Navara.
At the tail end of the field, and the last classified finishers, Class E champions Jannie Visser and Joks Leroux brought the RFS Toyota Hilux home to claim valuable championship points.
At the finish at the Game City Complex in Gaborone, thousands of enthusiasts lined the route and packed the grandstands as they waited for the first cars, and a huge cheer greeted special vehicle race winners Shamir Varayawa and Siegfried Rousseau in the Total Porter. Just 95 seconds behind them were championship leaders Evan Hutchison and Achim Bergman in the Motorrad Revo 1.
To the winners go the spoils, and as the champagne corks popped for the Total Motorsport pair, Shamir Varayawa revealed one of the race's best-kept secrets.
We drove the whole desert race without rear brakes. This morning we were 4th on the road. We got past Jimmy quite early in the morning, and then we got past Duncan, and then we got past Evan as well. And when we came to the tight sections, you know, the real tight sections, that's where the four-wheel drive plays an important role. Evan got past us then. And after the halfway, we decided, you know, let's just put the pressure on him and see what happens, you know. And he had a puncher. We got past him and we kept it in front all the way. And but it was tight driving the car without brakes, number one, and to try and beat the four-wheel drive in their type of terrain it was hard.
After totally dominating the race following a disappointing prologue, Duncan Foss and Ralph Pitchford put the finishing touches to the production vehicle victory. After starting 28th on the road, the Donaldson Nissan Navara crew were in the lead at the first DSP, and they never looked back. For Foss, it was his third successive Toyota Desert Race win, and Pitchford grabbed the victory that has eluded him over the last 2 seasons.
We had a great weekend. We battled a bit in the qualifying on Friday, which meant we started in about 28th position, which was a bit of a problem for us. But yesterday the conditions were perfect for us. They'd had a lot of rain in the area, so there wasn't too much dust. The wind picked up, and we managed to get through the field reasonably well. A lot of people had trouble, but we raced a couple of guys, and we got into the lead. And then today we had to really just focus on the job, not make any mistakes, drive quickly, but knowing that we had a bit of a gap, and we had a great day today.
The final podium place in the special vehicle category went to Steady Nick and Ryan Harper in the Atlas Copco back. They were followed across the finish line by the Castrol Toyota Hilux work crew of Anthony Taylor and Robin Houghton. Prologue problems saw them start 44th on the road, and theirs was a performance full of merit.
I must say, coming from 44th to finish where I finished now, second on the day, it's phenomenal. You know, it's not a easy task. It was pretty tough, and yeah, look, I must say the Toyota held out very, very well, and yeah, we didn't have any trouble this last section coming down from the DSP. Look, we'll just have to come back next year and do it fair and square and win it.
A strong recovery after day 2 woes saw Mike Whitehouse and Matthew Carlson bring the Regent Racing back home in 4th place, with the pair closely followed by Atang Makakhanene and Philip Archinal.
An interested spectator at the race was Castrol International's head of sponsorship, and despite having been tipped off about what to expect, Donald Smith gave the race a rave review.
Well, the guys at Castrol have given me a bit of advice about what I was going to expect, but to be honest, when I first got here, it has blown my mind a bit. The scale of the event, the actual professionalism of the organisers and the teams themselves, and finally, I think the spectators that I've seen out there and the enthusiasm of them, and specifically the numbers of spectators, have been very impressive.
Christian de Plooi and Henk Janssen van Vuren completed the production car podium, with Gary Berthold happy with 4th place.
Yeah, 4th SP, I think we're happy with the result. We understand it's a developing year for our Atlas Copco Toyota, so we can't expect too much. A very tough event, extremely tedious. We have to be careful out there, but so far so good with the vehicle. Well built, well put together.
The Toyota Kalahari Botswana 1000 Desert Race benefited from additional funding by Botswana cellular giant Masscom.
This year we decided to be even stronger with the Toyota Desert Race. It's a very well organized event, the biggest sporting event in Botswana and one of the biggest in Africa. So Masscom, as the leading network in Botswana, needed to be associated with this event.
After a long weekend for the brothers, Class B honours went to a delighted David and Gary White.
Yes, it's been a very long weekend, especially today. The last 200 guys just felt it's not going to ever end. But we just pushed on. We had a problem with the car, the electrical problem. Managed to sort that out. Took about half an hour, but we got it sorted out. And we're just very glad to be here. And we'd like to thank our sponsors, Rubicon and Vian and Ram Electrical, for sponsoring us to be able to do this event, and to Peter Ritson.
A brave effort saw Derek Du Toit and Ian Pinar win Class B, while the final classification in the production vehicle category saw Foss and Pitchford win by over 43 minutes. Class E winners Labuskaghni and Erasmus just missed a top 6 placing, with only 11 cars making it to the end.
Only 95 seconds separated the top 2 in the special vehicle category, where there were only 8 finishes. For the White brothers and Du Toit and Pinar, class wins were richly deserved.
Toyota missed out on the win, but 8 of the 11 production vehicle finishes were from the Toyota stable.
Well, firstly, from a branding point of view, Toyota is very big in Botswana, and obviously for our dealer here,
You know, Satai Dada has been a stalwart in that respect, and obviously we'd like to give him the opportunity to do this, you know, from a marketing angle, and also to show what our vehicles can do in Botswana, because this is obviously one of the places that's still, you know, quite wild and, you know, difficult type of roads. But as you said, we've got 4 cars in the top 5. We've got a lot of Hiluxes. I mean, you can see them behind me. So with the class wins and everything else, I think we did pretty well.
Duncan Foss and Ralph Pitchford are solidly in control of the Production Vehicle Championship, with Chris Viss and Jaapie Badenhorst moving into the top 3. Class E crew Pikkie Labuschagne and Rikus Erasmus also break into the top 10.
Evan Hutchinson and Achim Bergman dominated the special vehicle category standings, with some tight battles developing behind them. 2 Class P crews also make it into the top 10.
Next on the ABSA Off-Road Championship calendar is the popular Sun City 400 at the world-renowned Sun City Resort in the Pilanesberg.
The race takes place on July 24 and 25, and don't miss highlights right here on Supersport, your world of champions.
That was the ultimate test, the ABSA Off-Road Championship. Now fast-track yourself with vehicle...
Second in the championship.